Crypto is on the rise, making that dough in the crypto paradigm. Watching it go, buying low, selling high. Riding the wave, I'm here to stay, living in the digital age. No banks, no fees, just decentralized. It's crypto paradise. Ooh. No banks, no fees.
Alrighty, good morning from Paradise Surfers. Happy Monday morning. It is December 8th. We got a great show for you guys today, all about Ethereum and, of course, altcoins, which we know are tied to Ethereum. Some big news dropping over the last couple days. Obviously, we know this Fusaka upgrade went through flawlessly. Fees on Ethereum are like a cent right now. Sort of mind-boggling how effective this upgrade's been. We now have Bank of America saying their money managers can recommend that their clients invest in Ethereum. We have another upgrade on ETH coming, I believe, in January. And exchanges are holding the lowest amount of Ethereum since 2015. Does this feel like a moment we're going to look back and say, damn, should have bought the dip? Can't believe we're back at $5,000 ETH, by end of the year? Or who knows, maybe we're wrong on it. We'll have to see, but a lot of catalysts, and of course the rate decision on the 10th. So before we get into the meat of all those stories, how was your weekend, Nick?
Yeah, weekend was good. It's a little chilly here, but today, after this live show, I got some stuff to do, and then I have a buddy coming over helping me put up some Christmas decorations. A little late on that, but we usually do that the day after Thanksgiving, but it snowed the day after Thanksgiving. Then it melted the next day, and then it snowed the next day. So we've had snow on the ground ever since the day after Thanksgiving here. So no Christmas lights are up. Nothing's up. We'll get that done today.
Yeah, get it done, you bum. Get it done. Or just say F all that. We're flying down to Tulum. We're going another trip to the Paradise Pad. We're doing Christmas in the sun, in the beach, in the sand. I would love to go back. I missed it already. Yeah, it's cold as shit here too. I'm sitting here in a turtleneck. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. It is what it is. Happy holidays to everybody. All right, so what do we got going on? Maybe we start with some charts. Maybe we start with some lead stories. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, we'll start with the charts. We can see Ethereum here continues to grind higher. I know it felt like doom and gloom and Ethereum was over, but look at this. This is literally just a retest of the original breakout range here, which was the inverse head and shoulders that we called live on air. So that's not too crazy. It didn't feel good, but when you zoom out to the daily, I mean, it came right back to support. We saw a bullish divergence. We gave a buy, and now we're up from 2,600 to 3,150 as we try to break out towards this moving average up here of 3,500. That would be glorious now, wouldn't it? If we zoom in, what are we seeing? A lot of Fugazi, manipulation, liquidation checks. We see the dip here. We grind up. Massive liquidation, but a higher low. Grind up. Liquidation, grind up. Liquidation, grind up. So we continue to put in higher lows. Now we need to keep making higher highs, and we need to see this Ethereum V-shaped recovery continue to be underway. Obviously, there's a lot of fundamental things that we talk about on a daily basis that we believe fundamentals are leading price in Ethereum, but from a TA perspective, you're still neutral on the RSI, which means you have room to grow. You're not overbought on the technometer, which means you have room to grow, and you continue to put in higher lows even though the market makers are chasing liquidations each and every day.
Yeah, did see some of those wild swings this weekend, particularly on Bitcoin. Obviously, applies to Ethereum as well. So if you're doing leverage, yeah, just be very careful. They are hunting for your money, the market makers and the exchanges. Just be careful out there. To me, ETH is still the most, let's call it, or the best risk-adjusted opportunity right now. It is the number 2 cryptocurrency. The Fusaka upgrade just went out. I mean, there's just so much bullishness around it. Tom Lee's accumulating like mad, and it's still, sitting around $3,000. The all-time high from I think August we did hit 5,000 or 4,900 for like a second. So you're looking at a lot of upside potential, not a lot of downside risk in my estimation. with all the catalysts coming. But not financial advice as ever. I'm continuing to hold ETH. I believe in it, and very encouraged to see. Feels like the talking heads as well on crypto Twitter and YouTube, etc., are also starting to embrace it a little bit more and hate it a little bit less than maybe say 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, you can see here the Nasdaq is up 0.43%. Let's look at Bitcoin real quick. You can see more green on this list. That means some altcoins are catching green bids as Bitcoin and Ethereum continue to rally, which is what we want to see. We're just getting started, though. Obviously, things really get exciting if Ethereum can continue to go up, break above the 5,000 mark, which would be new all-time highs in the past 5 years for Ethereum. And then we are off to the races when it comes to some alts and retail investors hopping on board, in my estimation. We do see Bitcoin chart looking a lot like Ethereum, but it is underperforming, 91,456. This isn't a surprise to us. This is the trend is your friend. We think Ethereum continues to outperform Bitcoin for the duration of this cycle. Does the cycle end at the end of December, January, March, June, November of next year? We don't know. All I'm saying is for the remainder of this cycle, Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin. And that's why we are recommending to go heavy into ETH versus Bitcoin in your HODL positions. Currently, same story here. Neutral, RSI, neutral, technometer, more room to grow, higher lows, running into overhead resistance at these moving averages, and we want to break back towards these levels of 99 to 100,000, and then that will be a critical, let's decide the fate of the market's moment, guys. So everything is looking okay. Everything is on track. If we look at SBET and Bitminer, the biggest Ethereum DATs, the stocks haven't opened yet today, but they are called up. Last live shows we were at 32.48. I went back and watched the live show. It's set to open at 35.33. SBET was down in the 9s. It's set to open at $11 per share, and this will continue to rise as Ethereum has strength. When Ethereum has strength, these MNAVs will flip from discounts on these stocks to premiums, meaning these stocks will outperform. When a premium occurs on these stocks, they can raise funds and do what? Buy more Ethereum. That's how Ethereum went from $1,500 to $4,800, primarily with on the back of these type of DAT plays with no retail in the market, along with the ETFs. And the institutional infrastructure continues to grow, and that's why I'm looking for higher for Ethereum. As remember, I'm going to let you talk about it, Crypto Amaru. Potential rate cuts tomorrow by the Fed, hopefully another 0.25%, more rate cuts in January, in April, and March, and so forth. And I think the markets get easier and retail makes its way back.
Yeah. The 10th is going to be an interesting day because that's when we get the decision announced, right? I think the meeting starts tomorrow, then it gets announced on the 10th, and Powell does the press conference on the 10th. Now, had you asked us a few weeks ago, what do you think is going to happen to price? Should they do the rate cut? That was back when the market was predicting like a 50% chance. Now we're all the way up to 95. So it's probably priced in. Yeah. Let's just be honest. It's probably priced in at this point. The catalyst or lack thereof is really going to be dependent on what Powell says in the press conference. And that's been the case really for the past year and a half. What he says moves the market more than the actual rate decision. In pretty much in all instances. And so we're looking for him to come out and be dovish, talk about the labor market, talk about how tariffs didn't really cause inflation, that's not as much of a concern. Talk about some of the, let's call it shadow QE that's going on behind the scenes right now. They're injecting billions into the banking system. These overnight lending procedures are happening as we speak. And they haven't really been publicized, been a bit hush-hush. So does he come out and does he sort of acknowledge some weakness in the financial markets, weakness in the labor market, and a less of a concern about inflation? If those things come true, then you're looking at big green candles. Big green candles. Because that's not what happened in the last one. Last press conference was the opposite. It was, we don't know what we're going to do. Don't count on more rate cuts. We're still concerned about inflation. It's above 2%, blah, blah, blah. And the market crashed. So, look, it's, all eyes on Powell, all eyes on the Fed. Hopefully he does the right thing for risk assets and for the wider economy. But, it's hard to bank on it because he's just been so, let's call it inconsistent in these press conferences over the past few years.
Yeah, remember, it wasn't too long ago, a week or two ago, this was below 50%. We were calling for the interest rate cut, but the majority on poly market was not. And everybody's like, well, Nick, the poly market's always right. It's like, we still got a long way to go, and we're sticking with our guns that we're getting a cut, and now look at it now. So like you said, I agree with you that I think this is already priced in the market because it's a 95% chance, but it is going to come down to what his words are. If he is dovish, that is when you see a follow through, as then people will anticipate a cut in January, in March, in April, and a new bullish pro Bitcoin Fed chair here in May. This is why we are saying fundamentals could be, should be, are leading price in crypto for the very first time in a long time, because we are seeing QT ending, the potential of 4 more rate cuts, a new Fed chair in May, a Trump stimulus in May, and we got midterms in 2026, and Trump knows that people want lower prices, more money in their wallet, markets highs. That's what they can lean on, and that's how they get Republicans back in power for the remaining 2-3 years of his term as well.
I think it all plays out as we're anticipating, with ultimate cuts and obviously a dovish new Fed chair coming in May and getting announced well in advance of that. So I think it's all going to happen. The interesting thing we're seeing now, rate cuts, vis-a-vis risk assets, is the bond market itself. Actually, you're seeing the yield on the long-term debts, the treasuries, is still high. It's still actually like higher than the current interest rate that the Fed sets. And so there's been some speculation among guys who are deep in the financial industry that in these sort of scenarios where the bond market is just not cooperating with the Fed, right? Rates are low, but still the yield's high, and it's expensive to get, debt's expensive. That QE would be inevitable in that scenario. So we'll have to monitor that. We'll have to monitor that situation. My contention has been that for risk assets, and I'm not talking about like NVIDIA, I'm talking about like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and altcoins. For them to explode, you kind of need QE, not just the absence of QT, not just the tightening is over. Okay, we know that happened on the first. Yay, that's good. But now we need the Fed to start injecting money. So what's going to be the catalyst to start truly injecting money back into the markets, back in the financial ecosystem? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But it may just be ranging. Wouldn't be surprised if we continue to get chop and range up until there's confirmation of actual QE coming into play here.
Yeah, of course. It's all about liquidity and funding, and that's how that happens. What else we got going on here? Let's look at some more news. This is an interesting one, and then we go back to Ethereum. It seems like more and more stuff that we talk about now, maybe it's because we're biased on ETH, but a lot of it pops up to ETH. But this one is not about ETH in particular. Adoption. ETFs and public companies have more BTC than exchanges per river. And this goes right with what we've been saying for a long time. Retail is not here. You have OG retail. Those individuals don't have their bulk of their Bitcoin on the exchanges. They have it in private keys, and that's what we've been seeing coming over 1 billion, 9 billion, 5 billion, 118 million, all these big numbers. And then you have institutions who are soaking up OTC Bitcoin for the ETFs. They're holding it in like Coinbase custody or other types of assets. And this is what we were seeing. So, I mean, Bitcoin is being held by institutions, being picked up. Yes, there could be public players in the institutional market, but they are leaning on their financial advisors to tell them what to buy. That Bitcoin is not sitting on a centralized exchange. It's sitting in custody wallets, and there is no retail demand. So if retail comes in, and we have very little Bitcoin, very little Ethereum, altcoins that have been burning away supply for seemingly 3-4 years of a bear market here, that's how you can get the supply shock, the hopium and the big green candles on these assets. So it's always good to see this trending down. And this is why we invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum to begin with. Scarce digital assets with finite inflation, sometimes deflation, that can be tracked immutably on the blockchain. And it's good to see that these numbers are heading down. But it is bad to see that all the institutions are the ones accumulating everything. Where is the retail homies buying up some bags, having some diamond hands and setting these prices higher?
I don't mind it that it's institutions. Institutions at least hold on to Bitcoin for a reasonable time frame. I mean, retail, they'll buy for a week or two at times. I'll just get rich quick, and then like, oh, it didn't go the right way for me in a week, and so I'm selling everything, and then you see it, price go down. So I don't mind the institution. I'd much rather have majority of the Bitcoin held by institutions and public companies than a bunch of retail Jeets. Like, let's just be honest about it. So I don't mind that. Now, look, obviously you're right that there's no retail here. But this is a finite asset class, 21 million ever. For million of Bitcoin has already been lost. 1 million is held by Satoshi. That's not coming back into the market ever. So, we're talking about the finite of the most finite asset class. It doesn't take a lot for price to start to run. And when it does, that's when retail FOMO's in, because people love to buy green candles. They like to feel like they're getting that momentum trade and they're going to get rich quick, and all those things we saw that happen with gold when it was running up to 4,500 or whatever the all-time high on gold was. So it's going to happen. Finite asset. Not a lot of Bitcoin, guys. Get your hands on some Bitcoin. Good Lord. If you guys who are watching the show, you don't have any, you're just in alts, Look, I get it. You want to get
buy Ethereum. Screw Bitcoin. You'll outperform.
Well, yes, maybe in the end of this rest of the cycle, but who knows? There's gonna come a time when Bitcoin outperforms Ethereum.
Sure, you already missed it.
My best advice is to have both. Have both. Doesn't hurt to have.
That's not a good take, Crypto Amaru. That's not exciting.
It's also hard to get one Bitcoin. You can buy fractions, but that's not nearly as fun. But look, at the end of the day, whatever you choose, Bitcoin, ETH, you can't go wrong. If your time horizon is long enough, you're going to end up outperforming at some point. But this has been a tough year. It's been a tough year if you've been watching your AI stocks and everything else go up, 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 gold go up, 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 and Bitcoin will end up actually, I think, being down for the year unless we have some big outperformance over the next few weeks, which is crazy to think.
Oh, we're getting there. Remember, we want to see 95,000 Bitcoin or higher because that puts MicroStrategy in the green, and that starts the flywheel of them raising funds and buying more Bitcoin. So root for 95,000. It's only a couple $1,000s away, and things get a lot greener on the other side for MicroStrategy, and that flywheel starts to churn once again. Talking about outperforming, it's only outperformed for 24 hours, but I think we got to talk about Pulse Chain. Pulse Chain saw like a massive rally. PulseX was up 70% in 24 hours. PLS was up 35%, Inc was up like 40%, and Hex was up somewhere around 35% as well. When that happened, there's a couple things here. Number one, reflexivity, Hart's Law, LP bonding reared its head in a positive direction, showing that we're not lunatics. If Pulse Chain does absolutely anything, the altcoins that we hold over on Pulse, including RhinoFi, the Surf token, PTGC, will follow, go higher, and they will become deflationary as that occurs. We saw Surf go up 45% yesterday when Pulse rallied 35%. We saw PTGC go up 32%. We saw RhinoFi go up 22%, and the list goes on for some of the altcoins we've talked about on Pulse Chain in the past. That is due to the LP bonding. What's nice about Surf and PTGC and UFO is when that happens, you as a holder earn some rewards. Some of the supply is burnt forever. More LP is added automatically. So you can see why this reflexivity matters. If Pulse Chain does a 5x, these things probably do at least a 5x, maybe a 10, maybe a 15, while becoming more deflationary and paying you passive income. But talking about Pulse Chain, what happened here? Yes, it's only one day of green candles. Yes, somebody sold into it because it was up 75%. Now it's only up 44%. That's going to happen, guys. Traders are going to get out because every time there's been a pump on Pulse Chain, it's made sense to sell and you've been able to buy it cheaper. You got to leave these people behind at some point, and hopefully we can hold somewhere and then continue to rally again. Now, from what I've seen, there was about $1.5 million of buy pressure from Tornado Cash. Was this Richard Hart? Was this the Sacrifice Funds? Was this somebody else? Nobody really knows. But you got those kind of candles from only $1.5 million of injection when people are really looking to sell for profits. What happens if $700 million of the Sacrifice Fund just slowly, day by day, once a week, $1 million here, $1 million there, $3 million here, oh, some marketing over here. I mean, that just shows you how quickly things can move in this ecosystem. On the back of Ethereum only going up to 3,100, we saw Pulse Chain go up 35% and PulseX go up 75% with about $1.5 million injection.
We haven't heard from the crowd in months because it's been so bearish. So I'm glad the crowd is back in it. They're cheering for Pulse Chain. They're cheering for green candles. And yeah, look, if it was only an injection of 1.5 million and that happens, I don't know, maybe Richard Hart decides to do it once a week, whatever. Somebody gets sold into, okay, sure. But then you get that grind higher. You better believe people are paying attention and seeing these green candles across the crypto space when there's been basically nothing to get excited about. And here goes an asset class, 50% or whatever it was in a night. That gets attention. There's 700 million allegedly of sacrifice funds that have been moved through Tornado Cash. Does all of it get injected into the chain? Probably not, but even if some of it does, 1 million here, like you said, 3 million there. Man, this thing can turn quick. The tide can turn quick, and the sentiment. So love to see it. Love to see it. It's been brutal for Pulse Chain. It's been brutal for all altcoins the past 2 months. I mean, I had projects reach out to us. Should we still continue with Pulse Chain? This and that. It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe if you switch, you can, but it's like where it's not like there's some other magical chain where everyone's got money and it's just like just pumping every day. Like everything's in the shitter. So happy to see this. We needed it for the sentiment and the positivity. Great for Surf Token. Great for any of our holdings. RhinoFi, like you mentioned, many others. Happy for all that. And let's just see if it can sustain here, and we get some replication over the next few weeks with some more cash injections.
Yeah, and pretty much I replied to Richard Hart and said, you just need to leave a lot of these traders behind because it's been working to, you buy and then on any kind of pump or a multi-day pump, a month pump, whatever you sell, and you'll be able to get it back cheaper. So you got to leave those people behind. Of course, people are going to sell on a 75% green candle. Holy cow, I'll sell and I'll buy it back. Well, now it's time. It's come back down, wait for a 50% fib level or a 3.8 fib level or 6.5, and then send it again and leave those people behind. And they'll feel good because they made a trade. But then as you continue to grind higher, they have a bunch of cash. They're on your network. They got to inject it somewhere. It might not even be the cores. They might be like, all right, I'm not going to chase the cores. I'm going to go buy Surf or PTGC or another asset that hasn't run yet that I think I can outperform with. That's fine, though, because the way Pulse Chain is set up, that funnels lock liquidity for PLS, that funnels buy and burns of the PLSX token, and they're staying within your network. So that's what you got to do. You washed out a lot of people, but now you need the traders to want to be longer term, ride the wave higher, and get left behind if you continue to put in higher lows. Just like we've seen higher lows on Bitcoin and ETH, that's the same market structure you want to build on Pulse Chain, and that's how you can slowly garnish new users and get users on chain to hold for longer. Let's see what happened with the burn here. Surf has burnt 3.74%. Over 3.7 million Surf are bought and burned and gone forever. There is some money in the DAO wallet as well. The DAO has been loving to buy and burn. Maybe needs to add more LP. And there is some money in the no expectation wallets. Remember, that is in PLS. So I wouldn't expect those wallets to do anything right away. Maybe they want to see PLS value go up higher in US dollar terms because then it has a bigger impact on the Surf chart or Surf LPs as well. But nonetheless, not much volume going on, but another 4,000 Surf burned in the last day. And this isn't a big dollar amount, but if you're burning 2,000, 4,000, 50,000 Surf per day, each and every day, then that is how you create deflation, and that's how you work up and to the right on charts. Again, Surf token launched at like 10K, went to 3.9 million when Pulse Chain was good. Pulse Chain went to new all-time lows. Surf came down to like 200,000. So no, it's not fun. But during that time, you earned Surf and reflection rewards. You burned a ton of the supply. The LPs are continuing to auto-add. And we just saw with Hart's Law and reflexivity and LP bonding, when Pulse Chain turns around, Surf will follow, outperforming PLS, going up 45% yesterday with not a lot of natural buyers for the Surf token. That was just based on LP. I looked, there was like no natural buyers of Surf token. That was just the LP and the token taxes doing their job, creating a little bit of volume and following that LP higher.
Yeah, I saw some buys coming in, but I guess those were just the auto buys, maybe from the other coins that Surf is tied to or something like that. But yeah, love to see it. It just takes a couple of green candles on Pulse Chain, and all of a sudden, sentiment's flipped, positivity's flipped. I mean, you're seeing chatter coming back into the DAO group and even the main Surf group. It just takes a couple of green candles, guys. Like, I think people forget that, especially when we've been beaten down for the past, let's call it 2 years on altcoins. That things can flip relatively quickly here, folks. I mean, couple green candles, and all of a sudden the positivity's back. People start feeling a little bit risk on again. It's not like the money's completely left the ecosystem. There's a lot of people sitting on stable coins. They're waiting to redeploy. They're waiting for that signal that it's safe to come back into the market and that there's more upside potential than downside risk. And a couple of green candles, that's all it takes. So yeah, very happy for Pulse Chain. Very happy for Surf. Let's keep the momentum going here. And, it's all tied back to Ethereum at the end of the day. So what do we got here Ethereum-wise?
Yeah, we talked about this for Bitcoin, but the same applies for Ethereum. Latest Ethereum exchange balances have dropped to their lowest level ever as more ETH moves into staking, layer 2s, and custody, setting up a potential supply squeeze, according to analysts. As we know, this is what we've been talking about. The people buying and hoarding Ethereum are these Ethereum DATs, the Bitminers, the Thomas Lees, the ARKs, the Joe Lubins with SharpLink Gaming, etc., etc. Not only are they buying a ton of ETH and have targets to buy even more ETH, they're then staking that ETH on chain, and any earned ETH, they're not selling that, they're compounding it. That means not only are they buying up the Ethereum supply, but they're also taking a percentage of that inflation and locking it up as well. That is what is causing some of this supply shock potential. And we've also seen with Fusaka that now layer 2s are going to be having to pay more ETH, which is how that could even become deflationary with bigger burns. So if there's any kind of new interest, more institutions get involved, we get the Ethereum dividends paid out on the ETFs, we get any kind of retail wave from QE or stimulus checks, things can get exciting quickly. And that is what we've been talking about. That is what we're hoping for. Obviously, we thought it was going to happen when we tried breaking out of that 4,800 like 6 times. It fell through. We had the liquidation crisis. You had hawkishness from the Fed. Well, things are starting to flip here. QT has ended. More interest rates are coming. QE is coming. Trump is still talking about the stimulus checks in 2026 prior to the midterms. And I still believe fundamentals, leading price, and Ethereum is poised for a big run.
So undervalued. Ethereum is so goddamn undervalued. It's just crazy, man. But yeah, there's a number of catalysts coming outside of just the Fed, and I think we have another story queued up around Bank of America and their money managers now being allowed to recommend that their clients can start buying into ETH. You have Vanguard, I believe, now permitting their clients to buy into ETH and Bitcoin. So, there's been sort of and then the third thing I should mention is the head of the SEC, Paul Atkins, coming out on I think it was CNBC or maybe it was Fox Business, saying that within 2 years, they're looking to tokenize pretty much all the stock market. And that will be done on Ethereum. So, yeah, I mean, you guys aren't bullish enough. ETH is highly undervalued. If you're selling it now for peanuts, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you're not paying attention, but there's going to be people looking back and saying, damn, 3K ETH, what a deal. What a deal that was. Should have bought it. Should have bought into the end of 2025.
Yeah, and the Bank of America things means they can start recommending ETH to clients starting January 5th. And we know it takes time for clients to react. So, I mean, I think that you're going to start actually seeing inflows from this, not until probably middle or end of January, which kind of still goes with their thesis that we're on a 5-year cycle, an elongated cycle, because you just keep stacking new fundamental and macros that are coming. Not, hey, it already happened, this upgrade happened, whatever. It's like these things are still to look forward to. Like how much comes in here, who knows? But Bank of America, one of the largest centralized banks, has a lot of clients, manages a lot of AUM, and they're going to be able to start recommending ETH to clients starting January 5th. And I'll tell you what, the Thomas Lees of the world, the market makers of the world, the CZ, the Wintermutes, if you guys truly can manipulate the market, it would make a lot of sense to create some green candles in early and mid-January to get all of these new retail players to FOMO into the price.
I'll tell you what, too. CZ, Wintermute, if you guys are listening, time to manipulate the price up. Sick of the manipulation down. Before I get into my take on this story here, I do want to give a shout out to everyone watching. Thank you guys. Good morning to Nonso. Good morning to Jay. Good morning to Todd. I'm reminding people to like, share, subscribe. Martin, hello. Good to see you. Hexbull in the house. Hello, hello. And good morning to me, Chapo. All right, now that's out of the way. The interesting thing about Wall Street recommending Ethereum to their clients, and the wealth advisors can now say allocate X percentage to Ethereum, whatever the case may be. I actually think the pitch to sophisticated investors around Ethereum is a bit more persuasive than the one around Bitcoin. Like, I get it. Bitcoin, finite, digital gold. Doesn't really do much outside of that, does it? Just like gold doesn't do anything, right? It's just store of value, finite supply, a lot's been lost, 21 million, fixed inflation rate, kind of a predictable cycle with the halving, etc. So it's a nice pitch. It's a nice pitch. But Ethereum, that's a productive asset. The entire industry of crypto, outside like Solana and some other layer ones, runs on Ethereum, either directly or indirectly through the layer twos. You have daily burns of Ethereum based on these transactions. You can stake it to earn yield. And the infrastructure of it enables all these various use cases, including things like stable coins and tokenization of stocks and real estate. And of course, we know DeFi, NFTs, etc. So I don't know if you're a wealth advisor and you're pitching to some guy with like $50 million, I think the Ethereum pitch is a little bit more persuasive. What do you say to that, Nick?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. The reason being is there is actually some revenue. There is staking reward, passive income opportunity. There is, hey, this is the Microsoft of crypto or the next internet or whatever it may be. So there's a lot more ways you can kind of, in any sales, it's about reading your client. And the way you can pitch the same item, I can sell this pen to 50 different people, 50 different ways based off of who that person is or what their life circumstances is. I think that's the Ethereum pitch. There's so many different ways you can sell it, or whether you can appeal to somebody or they can benefit from it. And if somebody feels like they can benefit from it, that's when they want to buy it. For Bitcoin, there's really only two angles of appeal, and that's where you're kind of limited in your scope of trying to sell it. Also, the fact that it doesn't have unit bias either, because it's $100,000 a token. Ethereum, you can still be like, well, Ethereum's only 3,000 and Bitcoin's 100,000. What if Ethereum catches up to Bitcoin? People don't understand market capitalization. They don't realize you're referring to the value of Bitcoin from a market cap. They're gonna be like, whoa, what if Ethereum goes to 100 grand? So I just think there's a lot more ways that you can dupe people, if that's what you want to call it, into a sales pitch of selling Ethereum that benefits them as an investment, versus there's only a couple outlets to pitch Bitcoin at this point.
Not to mention it's highly undervalued. I mean, if you do understand market caps and FTVs, et cetera, you're looking at sub $500 billion market cap. I think last I checked was like 350 billion on ETH versus 2 trillion for Bitcoin. So plenty of upside from that standpoint as well. Yeah, I'm excited to see where Wall Street and let's just call it the sort of the boomer class of investors, how they continue to react to Ethereum. I think they continue to buy it up, stake it, hold it, move it out of exchanges. And, with the Fusaka upgrade, perhaps you start to see ETH veering back towards true deflation. The inflation rate, I think, is actually currently less than Bitcoin, believe it or not. But once it becomes deflationary and yield-bearing, I mean, that's a very powerful combination and very persuasive. So bullish on ETH as always. The ticker is ETH. And, of course, this means, if it does decide to run, that the rest of your altcoin bags will do well as well. So we should all be praying for that to happen.
Yeah. Ethereum performance dictates the entire market, in my opinion. Obviously, Bitcoin going up will help drag Ethereum. We saw when Bitcoin really outperformed, ETH went up a little bit. Solana had its moment. BNB had its moment. You had a couple outliers, a 3-day meme cycle on BSC, a pump tires cycle, a pump fund cycle. But when Ethereum goes up is when you actually have follow-through and opportunity and onboard new money into the ecosystem with retail. And we can see here now Bitcoin monthly returns. Thanksgiving wasn't fun. I'm sure none of you guys talked about crypto over your Thanksgiving feast. But we have flipped green now in December. And we talked about, hey, you need some big gains to get a positive year. Hey, it can happen quickly. $95,000 is only about $3,500 away for Bitcoin. That would, of course, be a green December, a green year for MicroStrategy, and more funds being raised to buy Bitcoin for Bitcoin DATs. And, of course, that could flow over to Ethereum's price action as well. Come on. We're hanging on by a thread, but we do have some bullish things happening before the end of the year, potentially rate cuts, more QE, maybe a strategic reserve bill. We're supposed to have another regulatory thing come through by the end of the year. So let's see what happens, and maybe we'll actually bring up crypto on Christmas Eve or Christmas or possibly New Year's with the family this year.
Wouldn't that be nice? Although I doubt it. 95,000, I think, is well within reason. I think we get there. If what you're saying is true, and 95,000 kind of that key level to keep MicroStrategy's, sort of whole scheme intact, or helps them tremendously. I would imagine that the players behind the scenes, the market makers, et cetera, they get us to 9,500 or 95,000, excuse me. Now, do we get back to all-time highs? No, I don't see that being possible. And I think we're gonna look back at 2025 and go, oh, okay, that was sort of the year that we were just grinding higher. Kind of a consolidation year. Yeah, we got a little bit excited around Trump's inauguration, got maybe a little bit ahead of ourselves, but it ended up being sort of a neutral year. And it was actually 2026 that's the insane, pump, and, similar to your whatever 2021 style year. I think that's what we're going to end up looking back and saying. But yeah, 2025 has been tough. Let's just call it what it is. I think mostly because the expectations didn't match reality. That's really what it comes down to for me. But we'll look back. We'll say, hey, 2025 was meh, kind of forgettable. 2026, that was the year we made it.
Yeah, and that goes with the thought process of a 5-year cycle, but it also goes with this ISM and really needing the expansion of the business cycle here. And right now, we've just been kind of grinding higher. This was the all the highs that lined up with Bitcoin cycle after cycle, and we've seen an expansion over the years. This was back in 2013. Well, Bitcoin topped. This was back in 2017. Bitcoin topped. This was back in 2020, 2021. Bitcoin topped. And now we're all the way down here. So how does this expand? What is going on here? We shall see. But all I'm hoping for is, hey, this is another indicator pointing that the 4-year cycle doesn't matter anymore. And it's always been about the ISM. It's always been about business expansion. And we still have a lot of room to expand here. Now, do we get all the way up here and expand once again? I don't know. That puts you around like 70. But even if you get back down to just, the average, meaning we can top somewhere around 64 or something on this ISM, we're still only at 48. So this does take months to have this explosive move, even on straight up moves, which will lead us deep into 2026. And we'll be watching this indicator, because if we get overbought here, I marked it up, or if we run into any of these resistance levels, bet your bottom dollar, that's where we think things could get a little frothy, and we'll be taking some profits in the form of stable coins, lock those stable coins up for some yield, and we'll root for the cycle to continue, but at least we will be right on waiting, having patience, and looking for higher objectives.
If Trump and the administration have anything to say about the business cycle, we'll certainly get back to those heady highs by, I'd say, mid next year, right in advance of the midterms. People are feeling the pinch right now. I know a lot of our viewers probably not in the States. That's you're from wherever, and that's great. And I'm sure you're also challenged in different ways. But people are like complaining about grocery prices. They're complaining about autos, car prices. They're complaining about everything right now. And so we need the Fed to cooperate, but we also need the administration, I think, to step in. Those $2,000 stimulus checks would be very much appreciated, I think, in 2026, which certainly helped that business cycle chart as well. So Trump's going to do what he can. Let's hope the new head of the Fed does what he can to sort of engineer some positivity and some bullishness back in the markets and the overall economy, because we need it.
Yeah, and lately we've just been talking very big macros and fundamentals, really focusing on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some other networks. Obviously, you guys tune in here because you want the alpha on gems, on altcoins, the opportunities, the DeFi, the passive income. That time will come, but it just hasn't happened right now in the market. Obviously, we have been telling you that we thought markets were very oversold down there. We gave a buy on Ethereum. We gave a buy on Bitcoin. So if there's altcoins that you liked, you could buy those if you had cash available. But we understand everybody's portfolio has a finite supply. Many of you are heavily invested, and you're already earning the yield you can. So until there is actually the market conditions that suffice, alpha calls, pre-sale investments, trades on microcaps, we're just going to talk fundamentals. We're going to talk macros. We're going to keep you bullish. We're going to keep you holding. And then we can capitalize on opportunities when the bank accounts and the portfolios look a little better from some of the holdings. So that's why we're not talking about it. We're not like every other YouTube. And maybe you can go chase some new gem or shitcoin on these other YouTube channels each and every day. But the market just doesn't fit for it. And avoiding that conversation for the past month has really saved you a lot of money. I'm watching the other YouTubers. They've been making calls, 1 or 2 or 3 coins every day for a month straight, and all of them do this and go straight down. So, there hasn't been a chance to win there. So if your portfolio is already tight and you keep chasing things when the market dynamics aren't there, you just keep losing. So I just want to throw that out there, because some people have been saying, oh, you guys are talking a lot about macros and fundamentals and you're keeping me bullish, but where's the alpha? Where's the insights? Where's the trade setups for these altcoins? The market dynamics haven't fit. That's why we've been giving you trade setups on SharpLink, on Bitminer, on Coinbase, on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, because those are the biggest, largest liquidity pools that we can actually pick lows on before we start talking about alpha opportunities again as the market heals.
When it's hard to make money, just almost too risky, I think. One thing you got to understand about portfolio management is one of the core things you always try to not to do is lose money. If you lose a bunch of money, it's hard, because then you're losing out on that compounding of your assets that would otherwise be present if you lost a bunch chasing shitty runners in the meme coin trenches, and there's plenty of people still doing that, by the way. But yeah, that's not how I look at the market. That's not how I've done well. And if it's kind of like if we don't believe in something, we're not going to be really pitching it to you guys. We're really not going to be talking about it. So if we don't think things can do well, and we're not getting bullish on it, how can we sit here and say, yeah, get invested in this, get invested in that? Like, you're just going to lose your shirt, and then it's hard to make money over time if your $10,000 bag is now worth 100 because you've chased a bunch of shitty runners when there's been no liquidity in the altcoin space. So don't get me wrong, like Nick said, I mean, the time will come. The time will come when the market gets risk on. There'll be plenty of opportunities. We're still talking to teams, by the way. We're still talking to projects. In fact, we spoke with one on Friday that I quite liked that built some infrastructure around the pump ecosystem. It's kind of like, investing in the casino business rather than, trying to strike it rich on red or black. I'd rather invest in the casino business. But in any event, I digress. There's still going to be opportunities. We're still working hard. It's just, it's hard to say, yeah, deploy your money here, there, because the gains just haven't been there.
Yeah, Martin Max King says people everywhere complaining about living costs going up. Yeah, that's what people don't understand. Inflation is a compounding metric. Once it goes up, it never goes down. The fiat system isn't built to have negative inflation. It's just not built. You're not going to have deflation in fiat money. So that's why, for example, I don't know what's going. There's been hyperinflation in many other countries. If any of you guys live there, that really sucks. Hopefully you have some Bitcoin, some gold, or even USD, because although it's just shitty fiat, it's still the best performing fiat globally. But that's why, for example, here we had Biden. It had 26% inflation in 4 years. So then people are like, well, Trump's supposed to lower prices. What's going on? Well, inflation has been tapered down to 2 to 3%, but that 2 to 3% still stacks on top of 26% for the past 4 years. You can't reverse that. That's why it is so important that you vote wisely, that you understand how these things work, because once there's inflation, it will never, ever come back. The only way you can lower prices on any good is you got to either decrease demand, which means that everybody's poor and nobody can buy anything, or you got to increase supply, which is what Trump is trying to do by getting all these companies to invest here, build manufacturing here by tariffing everybody else that wants to build outside the country. Other than that, inflation always compounds. Trump's first term, 8% total inflation. Then you put 26% on top of that for Biden, and now you're back down to 2 or 3%. That's why that 26% in 4 years matters so much. Your $1 turned into 75 cents in 4 years. And it will never, ever come back ever again.
We're still feeling the effects of that throughout the entire economy, throughout the financial markets. That was a calamity that I think we're going to look back and say, wow, we printed about 2 trillion too many. I think maybe 1 trillion to stave off like the worst effects of the COVID, let's call it the COVID crash or COVID people losing their jobs, whatever it is, and we can debate whether that was worth it, but it did happen. We needed some sort of financial assistance at that time, but then they did another stimulus. Then they did another stimulus to the point that like something like 60% of all USD in circulation was printed since 2021. Something crazy. So, this is what happened. We're still dealing with it. You have to be invested in hard assets. That's really the sort of overall take, the overall opinion that I have around it, because you're not going to change the system. Like Nick mentioned, you're not going to somehow magically make inflation go away. It compounds on top of itself. Even in a great year, they're aiming for 2% price increases. So you just got to be invested and hope your investments outperform the inflation, which is also not an easy thing to do, frankly, because if you're invested just in an S&P 500 index fund and you're up 8-10% a year, you're beating inflation, but just by a little bit. So that's why Bitcoin, ETH, these hard assets, I know they're very volatile. I know sometimes they have down years. But if you're looking to beat inflation consistently over like a 10, 20-year time horizon, what better to be invested in than the hard assets?
This individual, Anu Buchi Zuku Woohoo Kaku. I don't know how to say your name, but maybe you can put the Ebonics in there for me or something. I don't know. Well, will Ethereum go back to 3,000? In order for this market structure to continue, and for you to have continue to have upside and not have this slow down consolidation or even new lows on Ethereum, you want to continue to put in higher lows. That previous low is down here around $2,925, $2,920. So you could retest 3,000 and remain bullish. Now, will it happen? We shall see. We're only 162 higher than that, so it doesn't take much for you to get a red candle. So if you own no Ethereum and you got a lot of cash, I would say start dabbling at least. Get 25% here because it does look like as long as stocks remain good, you do have overhead ability to put a new high above this level and then get slowed down or rejected up here around $3,373. And again, downside to remain bullish, you want to hold this $2,900 level to keep putting in higher lows. So if you have all flush with cash, you're sitting on cash, you were a genius, you took this sell higher and bought nothing back, I would start dabbling down here just in case. But again, there is opportunity to go to 3,000 and still remain bullish for this market structure.
You know what's going to happen? Say you don't buy and you're just waiting for price to go lower. Well, what's going to happen is Powell on the 10th is going to come out in his press conference and just be ultra dovish. Just say everything that the bulls and the doves want to hear, and we're going to just port straight to like 3,750 or 3,800 or 4,000, wherever the next level is. And then you're going to be left behind. Of course, if you decide to buy, then the opposite's going to happen, and he's going to be bearish, and it's going to crash, and you're fuck, so one of those things. But no, I'm being a bit facetious, bit tongue in cheek. I do think there's a better chance of dovishness out of Powell than hawkishness, just because of everything we've seen over the past month with the labor market not looking great and inflation basically being, I don't want to say defeated, but it's been well below 3% for many, many months now. And I don't see it reversing course and just magically shooting back up out of the blue. So I think he's going to be dovish. I think we're going to get some nice green candles on the 10th, and we'll see how high it actually goes and if it then sustains or just reverses back down.
Yeah, from the human aspect of Powell, like, will he hold a grudge because it's pretty much inevitable that he loses his job next May? Or will he want a legacy and be like, all right, well, this other guy's going to come in, and he's going to cut rates if I don't. He's going to be dovish if I don't. Markets are going to go higher in 2026, and then I'm going to have to listen to Trump say, told you so, too late, Powell did nothing, and look what happened now that we got rid of him. Or just hop on the bandwagon. Let's push for rate cuts. Let's be dovish now, and then you won't have to have all that criticism when you get replaced in May. That's what I would rather do as a human being. But let's look at human psychology. I know he's not supposed to be a human there, but obviously he's been political in the past. Obviously everybody is human, and I would be him and just protect my legacy. Stop being too late, pal. Don't want to be remembered that for the rest of my life. Let's get rate cuts. Let's get markets pumping, and then you go out on top in May, and you're like, oh, not my problem anymore anyways. Hope you enjoyed those green candles for the last 4 months of my term.
I think that's probably what ends up happening, right? They're gonna cut the rates. We know that. That's essentially a foregone conclusion. I think he's gonna come out and say mostly dovish things. We'll have to see. But remember too, it's not just on Powell. I know he's the head of the Fed, but the decision makers, I think there's like 19 voters, that are part of the Federal Reserve that make these rate decisions. So it's not really just on Powell. And there's apparently a few of them that are just like, inflation is not at 2%, and until it is at 2%, we cannot and must not decrease the rates. And I don't know, they don't want to change their mind on that. So, it's not just on Powell. I think people need to sort of recognize that, remember that. But I think he does corral and persuade enough of them where the majority say, cut the rates, and then hopefully, it comes out and says some dovish stuff, because, goddamn, we need a little bit of a reprieve here if you're holding risk assets, don't we?
Yeah, the year-to-date lowest inflation rate according to Truflation was 1.22%, cascading much lower from the highs of Biden's term. The high for the year was 3.04%, and the current year-on-year change was 2.5%. Remember, the target on the best of years is 2%, but really they hit more around 3%. They came in at year-on-year 2.5%, which is exactly what the mandate is in order for the Fed to cut rates and actually rely on the data that's available. We're also seeing inflation being tampered out, and I think it continues lower just due to the fact that a lot of these companies are going to start manufacturing here in the United States. And remember, we're talking about U.S. inflation. So if there is more supply here, then even if demand rises or stays the same, prices should be able to go down because companies can profit on that much easier without having to import it and pay tariffs and everything else. We're also seeing, I believe, that housing prices are going to go down. Why? Self-deportations, ICE deportations. A lot of them are in subsidized housing and or buying their own house. Not saying all of them don't work. The numbers are pretty egregious, though. Illegal immigration in many of these communities, the subsidies are somewhere between 38 to 48%, which makes no sense to me. But anyways, all those people will be thrown out on their ass, be thrown out of the country, and then you're going to have all those housing units that are going to be available for American citizens, which should lower the cost of housing prices here in the U.S. Why? Because there's going to be an influx of supply. And anybody who owns real estate, I just saw your real estate video, you want to make sure you have tenants in there and people paying for that. Otherwise, you're paying the mortgage out of pocket, which means that you will lower your price to get a new long-term tenant in those buildings. That is the trajectory that I'm seeing, and I think that helps with inflation over time as well, because this inflation metric does include housing and as well as energy, and energy prices are low. We're seeing the the country average price of gas now below $2 per gallon. So these are all trending in the right direction, and that's what we like to see.
Yeah, the balance of sort of the factors, inflation versus disinflation, I completely agree. You're seeing more disinflationary sort of events play out. You mentioned the immigration. There's automation as well that's happening, right? AI is taking jobs. Even people don't want to believe it. That's disinflationary. You have gas prices very, very low right now. So there's just a lot of disinflationary forces. I know that tariffs are a thing. I know that certain goods that are being imported are likely costing a bit more now than they did, say, a year ago. But that's only one small slice of the overall inflation reading. A lot of it's the real estate stuff, actually. So, yeah, if the immigration plan continues to play out as we see it playing out, you should see more units being freed up, more supply, prices going down, and that should obviously benefit the inflation reading as well. So we're heading in the right direction, folks.
A final thing on that, I have gotten some kickbacks from some Democrats and liberals, friends, family, whatever, talking about, oh my gosh, deportation is bad, ICE is doing a bad thing, oh, this is heinous, this has never happened in America before. And if you want to argue with those people and literally get them to shut up and realize they have no idea what they're talking about, simply say, oh, okay, you don't like deportation, you don't like ICE, you don't like what's going on here with illegal immigrants. Okay, that's cool. How many people were deported under the Obama administration? And then they'll go on Google and they'll look that up and be like, holy cow, I had no idea. That's because illegal deportation was never seen as a bad thing when Obama was doing it or Democrats are doing it. Democrats are just using this as a tool to try to evangelize and get you to be like, oh my gosh, have some suicidal empathy that we call it and feel bad. Look at the numbers of deportations under Obama. They dwarf what has happened so far by Trump, and they dwarf the projections that are coming from ICE and Trump as well. So if they hate on it and you let them do their spiel, yell at you, this, that, and the other, sit there silently and then just say, look at the deportations under Obama. They will shut up and maybe they'll reevaluate their lives, reevaluate their positions. And if anybody tuning in here says, oh, I hate when Crypto Armor and Nick talk about illegal immigration and talk about deportations, well, I'm sure you're pro-Obama. Go look at those numbers. And you need to reevaluate what is real reality and what has been ingrained in your head by watching mainstream media.
Yeah, I think you can think two things at once. You can think that immigrants are a net positive for the country because they come in, they're working hard, taking jobs Americans want, all those things, right? But that illegal immigration needs to stop and should end, and that there's a lot of negative consequences to the illegal immigration. So if you're an immigrant out there, you're in the country illegally, perhaps reapply. I don't know. Figure out a way to come back in, and maybe the law is making it possible. I don't know. I'm not some expert in immigration laws, but the point is, our ancestors, everyone's an immigrant technically, going back whatever in America, but most of our ancestors came in the legal fashion. So find a way to do that. I got a buddy. He's marrying a woman. She's trying to become an American citizen. They're going by the legal way. And it's taken a lot of time. It's taken like a year and a lot of money and a lawyer and this and that. And it's like, dude, that's what it takes. Do it the right way. Nothing wrong with that. And for those who are here illegal, you can self-deport and then reapply. Why
Yeah,
not do
they're
that?
also paying, if you want to self-deport, you can get a free flight home and you can get $1,000 in your bank account. And then you can
No
reapply.
shit.
But if you get deported by ICE, because I'm sure I know some illegals, if you get deported by ICE, you are never allowed to come back again legally. So you can choose your fate, roll the dice, or you can self-deport, get a free flight, get $1,000 in your bank account per adult in your household, and then you can try to reapply. So, and for the people who are out there protesting and waving other flags and death to America, all this other shit, then why are you here anyways? If your country or your beliefs are so great, then go to those countries. But you won't. So that's why ICE exists, because you won't. So we'll see how it all plays out. Sorry to get on a rant there, but if you are against illegal immigration or you hate Trump because of deportations, go look what Obama did. It absolutely trumps, pun intended, anything Donald Trump is doing and the projections that ICE is giving.
And this is a great point by Frank here. Noticing how most people don't know why they hate Trump. They just repeat stuff they heard, like racist. He's a racist without being able to pinpoint what exactly that is. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that too. And look, a part of it might be the way Trump sort of delivers and the way he comports himself. It's sort of a, let's just call it a non-traditional way of behaving if you're a politician, which may turn off some people. And of course, you got the bleeding hearts or the extreme leftists who are just going to hate whatever and racist and be out in the streets, chanting this and that. I think most people, first of all, are moderates actually in this country. They're not extreme left, they're not extreme right. They're sort of more or less in the middle. From a policy standpoint, they appreciate and are in favor of what Trump has been doing. From a delivery standpoint, from kind of the way he goes about it, maybe that's a turnoff for some folks. I don't know, but ultimately, I think we're going to look back because you can't judge an administration based just on 1 year, just on the first year, right? So we'll look back after the 4 years and we'll say I think Trump's term 2.0 was definitely a net positive for the country. I think it's going to end up being better than 1.0, Trump 1.0 even, because I think he's kind of gotten his act together. He's kind of figured out how to work things a bit better. His foreign policy's been great, at least from my standpoint. People may disagree. Foreign policy has been great, huge improvement over Biden. So anyway, I think we're gonna look back and say, wow, Trump actually was a good thing, despite the way he sort of behaves and talks or whatever, which turns off some people. But is what it is. You can't appeal to everybody. We're a pretty divided country, so is what it is.
I think it's almost like a faux divide, though. Like I really think the majority are in the middle, and that line has just moved so far. That's why, like, I didn't give a shit about politics until 2016. After watching what Obama did, seeing the implications of his decisions, that's when I got it. I'm like, who's this Trump guy? Oh God, Hillary Clinton's views, those are awful. I didn't even give a shit. Didn't care. But then you saw the direction of, I really didn't do videos on politics until after I think Biden had a stolen election. That's just what the data says. I'm a math major, guys. The anomalies there are impossible. Okay, that's just a fact. You can say whatever, election denier. No, that's reality. But then after watching what him and Kamala did for 4 years, it forced my hand to talk about politics, do videos, try to rally voters and people in my community, because I saw what would happen if Kamala actually won. I thank God every day that Kamala didn't win, and now we'll see what happens with Trump. So far, the markets are doing well. The country's on the right track in my estimation, and we'll see what happens. But again, I think I agree with you. Most people are moderate. I did not care about politics, and now people will say I'm a far-right extremist. I did not care. It's just that line has moved towards the direction so far, because if you vote left, you look at their lunacy ideas, the way they're spent, the transgender, all this woke shit, that is crazy for most of Americans. And it's just they get the praise because on media they go look at the protest of 40 people, they hype it up, and I really do believe it's a minority of individuals who are that far left.
Yeah, the problem is those individuals, I don't want to say control necessarily, but they're decision makers at like the major media companies. They do influence the information that people get. So that is a concern. I never really was too political either. The thing that made me more political was just having a family and having now a lot of financial obligations that I didn't used to have. And then you learn about like the people that are just getting free government money, and meanwhile I'm paying tens and tens and tens of thousands on taxes every year between the state, the Fed, and local. And then I got to feed my family. I'm going to Costco, and it's $300 a week, and this and that. That shit, and then so that's what got me a little bit riled up, is just the financial side of it and just feeling the unfairness of it all. If you're working hard if you're taking risks as an entrepreneur, or if you're just, 9 to 5, blue collar guy, I don't care what it is. But if you're working and you're paying 40%, 30 to 40% in taxes across all the various kind of taxes that you're getting taxed on, and then there's certain people that are just getting free stuff handed to them, that should infuriate everybody. I'm sorry. It should just infuriate everybody. And I don't know if that makes me, right-wing extremist or what, but I'm just sick of getting taxed, and then there's freeloaders, getting free money. That's basically my money that they're getting now.
Taxes are too high. Then you got Somalians stealing $1 billion, even though they only provided 67 million of net economic benefit to Minnesota, for example. That's what's happening in the country. It starts small, starts in municipalities, then it goes to cities, then it goes to states, and then your whole country turns into the UK and becomes utter shit. And the more and more shit you let it be, the harder it's going to be to revitalize. UK isn't dead yet, but look at all the statistics. You need some hard people. You need the next Trump to get in there, and it's going to take a decade of people going to need to keep voting in the next Trump in the UK to save that civilization before culture is gone, economic prosperity is gone. They've already lost their military dominance. That's nearly obsolete. And the resources are getting soaked up. So, I mean, that can happen to the United States just because it hasn't yet. Look on the wall. Look what's going on with the European Union. And if not, you're not careful. It's happening in Canada right now. It could easily trickle its way in North America, especially if Kamala won. I don't even know if we could be doing this YouTube broadcast. Maybe that's a little extreme, but that's probably reality.
Well, certainly the crypto industry wouldn't be the same as it is today. The lawsuits and the criminal investigations and whatever would have continued on, because that was a part of the Democrats' agenda. It was, let's basically strangle this industry, which gives people kind of an out. It gives people a way to escape the system, right? And they were going to move more towards centralized state control of money, centralized state control of information. All those things that you look at the EU. That's what's happening. So speaking about the EU and taxes, we got Frank. I'm pretty sure he's somewhere in Europe, paying 50%. Yeah, man, it's mind-boggling. I was reading the other day that...
I gotta pop out. I'm late. I forgot I had to leave here, but you can keep going.
Or you can leave in 1 sec after I say this point. Apparently, in the slavery days of Egypt, going back 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, whatever it was, the slaves in Egypt paid less taxes than we pay now.
I think it was like 20% or something.
Yeah, exactly. So we're worse off from a tax perspective than the slaves in Egypt that were, building the pyramids. So really crazy stuff to think. Get out there and vote. I know we'll get back to some more crypto related. We'll get you some degen plays, guys, when the time is right. But until then, we're talking macros, we're talking politics. It all counts. It all matters. If you want your altcoins to pump, well, certain things need to happen from a macro standpoint. So just remember that. Yeah, Meek Chapo out here in Canada, I think, paying 50%. It's just we're tax slaves, I guess, guys. I guess that's what it is now. Cool.
Cool. All right, we'll talk soon. I gotta get out of here.
All right, great. Good stuff, guys. Until next time, tomorrow, we'll see you on the beach.